Welcome to the WTR Small-Cap Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Tim Gerdeman, Vice Chair and Co-founder and Chief Marketing Officer of Water Tower Research. In today's podcast episode, I'm being joined by Ina Braverman, Chief Executive Officer of EcoWave Power, NASDAQ, ticker symbol WAVE. EcoWave Power is a front-runner in the commercialization of wave energy through its patented, smart, and cost-efficient onshore wave energy technology. Also joining me is my WTR equity research colleague, Peter Gastreich. Good morning, Ina and Peter, and thank you for joining today's podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Morning, Tim.
First off, Ina, I'd be remiss if I did not acknowledge that I truly enjoyed EcoWave Power's LinkedIn post and video that I saw yesterday from the Port of Los Angeles. It was truly fascinating. Moving on, however, for those listeners who may not be familiar with EcoWave Power, would you please provide our podcast audience with a high-level overview of the company and its corporate strategy, as well as providing a quick overview of your professional background, please?
So EcoWave Power developed a unique innovative technology for generation of clean electricity from ocean and sea waves. We decided on a completely innovative approach. Most of the competitors went into the offshore, which is deploying wave energy systems, big floaters in the middle of the ocean. We decided on a simplified but smart technology that's connecting to existing man-made structures such as piers, breakwaters, and jetties. We're currently operating a grid-connected project in Israel, in the port of Jaffa, in collaboration with EDF, Électricité de France, which is the largest renewable energy developer in Europe. We just opened our second pilot and in the world, and the first one here in the United States, in the port of LA, at Altasea's premises in the port of LA, with co-investment from Shell Marine Renewable Energy Program. And we're currently working on our third, fourth, and fifth project, which are coming up in Taiwan, India with Fortune 500 Bharat Petroleum, and in Portugal, which will be our first megawatt scale project. So EcoWave Power is really developed a simple, innovative technology, and that's what enables the company to kind of also execute fast or execute faster than its competitors.
That's really interesting stuff. I'll turn it over to Peter to ask a few questions, and I'll come back full circle.
Thank you, Tim. Ina, I'm looking forward to digging our heels into your company's operations and the global footprint you mentioned in a moment. But I'd like to first dive straight into the technology. What is EcoWave's technology? How does it work? And what do you see as the key competitive or cost advantages when compared to other forms of renewable energy, for example, like wind and solar?
So our technology is very smart but simple. We developed unique floater shapes. These floaters attach to existing man-made structures such as piers, breakwaters, jetties. They're moving up and down with the movement of the waves, pushing a hydraulic cylinder which transmits biodegradable fluid into land-located accumulators. A pressure is being built. The larger the waves, the higher the pressure. And this pressure is turning the hydromotor, turning a generator, and once connected to the grid through an inverter, the energy goes safely into the grid. The whole system is controlled by a smart automation system. So when the waves are too high for the system to handle, our floaters automatically lift above the water level, and they stay in the upward position until the storm passes. When the storm passes, they go back into the water and commence operation. Yesterday, it's interesting that you ask what's unique about the technology. So yesterday I had an interview for NBC News, which is actually coming next week. And the host there, Gadi Schwartz, he said, I don't want to offend you, but it all seems so simple. Like it's a no-brainer. So I said, that's not an offense. That's actually like the largest or the biggest compliment that you can give me, because wave energy haven't commercialized for decades because it was too complicated. It was breaking down all the time. It was very difficult to have a supply chain for it. And now it's simple, it's easy, and it can actually happen fast. And as opposed to, you asked as opposed to wind and solar. So I think that the advantages of wave energy in comparison to wind and solar are very clear. Solar is an amazing source of renewable energy, but you have the night, you have cloud coverage, you have winter. Solar energy cannot produce any electricity. So it has a big problem of being intermittent. Wind energy is also a great source, but it's built for the height, so it has a significant visual impact. It makes noise. So, in the offshore, it's disturbing the whales. In the onshore, it's disturbing also the birds. Like, nobody wants a huge windmill in his backyard. So it occupies also very large, both solar and wind, they occupy very large land spaces when they're onshore, which can be used for other things like agriculture or, development of housing. Wave energy basically solves all these. First of all, wave energy, according to scientists, is the least intermittent source of renewable energy. In suitable locations, it can actually generate electricity 24/7 around the clock. We don't occupy any prime real estate or any expensive land. We connect to existent man-made structures like breakwaters, piers, and jetties, which are not used for anything other than breaking the waves. So we take something that is actually damaging to the environment, because all these breakwaters and piers are not good for the environment, and we turn it to a source of clean electricity. We produce zero noise. Our floaters don't contain any of our generators. All the generators are on land, just like a regular power station. So there's no noise to marine life. There's no disturbance. So it's simple, it's easy, it's cost efficient, and it makes sense.
Yeah, those are a lot of great points. I like the intermittency. That's the one that resonates the most with me. That's really amazing. It's a great overview. Could you tell us about EcoWave's global footprint? You mentioned that you're located in multiple jurisdictions globally. I think it's like 4 continents. You have a new pilot in the US. Where are your projects? What are you learning from them? And are you able to share which project is at the most advanced stage right now?
So we have a global presence, and we're very proud of that, because we believe that the more installations we put out there in different countries or different territories, the more legislation and awareness is being created around wave energy, and then the path to commercialization becomes much shorter and faster. We currently operate the first in history grid-connected project in the Middle East, in Israel, which is in the port of Jaffa. It's already connected to the grid 2 years, sending clean energy to the grid safely on a daily basis. That's a project that we did together with Électricité de France, as I mentioned before, and also with investment from the Israeli Energy Ministry, which funded 50% of the cost of the project. This is the project where we collect energy generation data, we improve the technology, we improve our measurements in order to prepare also for our next pilots and for our next commercial installations. The project that we opened on September 9th, a month ago, in the Port of LA, is our first US-based pilot. US is a huge market for us. According to the United States Energy Information Administration, wave energy could supply around 66% of all the United States energy needs. For comparison, right now, only 20% of the energy in the United States is produced with all renewable energy combined. So 66 more, that's really a game changer. So we started with a pilot in order to get our technology kind of familiarized by ports, by coastal cities, by coastal states. That already led to amazing amount of interest. We're in discussions with New Jersey, with legislators in New Jersey that are wanting to promote legislation. And to do a pilot also on the steel pier in New Jersey. We also were contacted by Redondo Beach, which is kind of a neighbor to the Port of LA. They want to do a project as well. A legislation came to life. Senate Bill 605 was signed by Governor Newsom into law to promote wave energy in California. We had a visit yesterday that Tim mentioned in the beginning from Congresswoman Annette Barragan. She's promoting a federal legislation to appropriate $1 billion for the promotion of wave energy in the United States. So really, I think that what happens in the United States receives significant visibility. And once the United States fully adopts wave energy, it can actually become like a game changer here. According to President Trump, in order for the United States to keep its leadership in the artificial intelligence field, the United States has to double the amount of its produced electricity. And with 66% additional clean energy coming directly from the wave, that can be definitely a solution for the AI data centers and so on. Now, next project that we have kind of on our pipeline is our project in Taiwan. We just announced that our partner there, IKE, they won the tender for the land and for the ocean space that is needed for the project. It's the first time that a port in Taiwan is giving space officially to a wave energy developer. We're very excited about that, and we're planning to go into construction in February 2026. Taiwan is also a huge market for us. Our partner did a feasibility study. They're interested to start with a pilot, but continue to grow it to 400 megawatts of project, which is, of course, a very, very substantial amount. We also signed a deal in February this year with Bharat Petroleum and MOU, and are promoting a pilot project with them in Mumbai Oil Terminal. And our largest project, you asked, the most advanced project to date that we're doing is our project in Portugal. We signed there a 20 megawatt concession agreement with APDL. It's a local port authority in Porto. And we're starting with 1 megawatt since the licensing process was faster, and then hoping to expand it to the whole 20 megawatt. And I think this project is very important and key for EcoWave Power and for the wave energy kind of field as a whole, because here we will be able to show that not only that we're cost efficient and that we're reliable and that we're environmentally friendly and that we can easily connect to the grid, but we can actually show that we can generate substantial energy amounts. It's a megawatt plant, so we can already generate significant amounts, and a Portuguese site has 90% wave availability. So it's production almost around the clock, which is very, very impressive, I think, for any renewable energy source. And we're certain that we can produce much more energy on the 200 meters that we're doing the first megawatt, and show that we produce more than wind and solar on the same space.
Yeah, it would appear that, given you're moving into so many different jurisdictions globally, that you're not really running into a lot of resistance from a policy perspective, but I still definitely want to ask about that. Because again, you are in a lot of different areas of operation. It seems like there would be a lot to navigate there. Permitting process, supply chain factors. Are there any risks that are, that significant from that policy perspective that you've found yourself having to deal with? You mentioned you have a lot of local partners. I'm sure that's extremely helpful.
I wouldn't say there's a risk, but I would say it's a process. The way that we harness the energy of the waves is very simple. It's even simpler to license, I would say, than, let's say, wind turbines. Since you don't have the noise pollution, you're not taking prime real estate, you're using a structure that already interfered with the environment, so there's no environmental concern, really. So it is a simpler technology, so it is also simpler to license. But the difficulty is in the fact that everybody heard about wave energy. The first patent was written in 1902, so hundreds of years ago. But really, wave energy haven't commercialized. And because the governments, I assume, and the policymakers didn't see the commercialization of any wave energy technology in the past, they kind of didn't do the legislation and the licensing pathway for it. So it's a kind of a very new source. Once governments, policymakers, municipalities, once they actually sit together, look at the technology, understand the technology, the whole licensing process becomes fast and easy. But we need to get to that point. And that's the reason why we're implementing so many pilots with such large clients in order to make it faster. And I'll give you as a perfect example the Port of LA project that we just opened. So we received the last license from the Port of LA in March 2025. And the project was up and running in July 2025. So it took us 4 months to build the project to an operational state. It took us 2 years to get the licenses. So 2 years, it's funny to say, but when you're talking to solar and wind developers, they're saying that for their commercial assets, sometimes it takes them 8 years. So they're saying 2 years for a new type of technology, that's super fast. But I'm saying with the simplicity of our technology, it should be even faster. And I'm sure that when governments are more familiar with our technology, which we will achieve through our pilot and new project implementations, then we could license a project like this within 6 months, up to a year, but not 2 years.
So you have the technology, the global footprint, you've got the great local and international partnerships. Now, what is your strategy for taking this platform, moving it forward, and going into commercializing and really scaling up this business from here?
So we have a short-term strategy and a longer-term strategy. So in the short term, as I discussed before, we want to implement as many pilots as possible in different locations in key markets in the world. We're not funding these pilot stations from our balance sheet. We have strategic partners, which are also the funders of these pilots. So that kind of enables us to maintain a lean kind of capital cost. We don't need to invest significant funding into these projects because really we have our partners and that are assisting us with that. So in the short term, that will reinforce our revenue stream, will make us more financially stable and enable us to achieve presence in different locations around the world. And in the longer term, our interest is in working actually in a BOT, when we build, operate, and then transfer the asset, or BOO, when we build and own and operate the asset, because if you're looking at energy companies around the world, the largest profit margins are for the companies that are actually selling the electricity versus the ones that are selling the assets. So once wave energy reaches to the point that it's commercially viable and the world accepts it, it has the policy, which we're in the process, in a very fast process of doing that, and has access to debt financing, because that's the way right now solar and wind and most large energy commercial plants are being built. Then we can actually start, instead of building one project, waiting for funding, building another one, we can actually start building multiple yielding assets in parallel and making money from selling the energy to the grid or to the communities rather than selling the equipment.
Okay, so one thing I'd like to ask all of our podcast guests and give them this platform to address is, what do you think analysts and investors most often misunderstand or get wrong, either about your company's strategy or the overall industry outlook?
So I think that a lot of investors misunderstand the simplicity of our technology and how relatively easy it is to scale it. They heard about wave energy from, there were previous companies that were listed and private, public, and there were a lot of high profile failures of offshore wave energy developers. There was a company called Pelamis that built like a power station for 100 homes off the coastline of Portugal with investment of $150 million, and it broke down after 3 days of operation. So all these high profile failures of complicated technology kind of created a fear factor with investors. And I think sometimes I see that it takes me a time to get a meeting with an investor because he's saying, no, I looked at wave energy, it's not there, it's too complicated. And when I actually have him come to the meeting, he's saying, wow, it's so simple, I didn't even think of that. So kind of, we need to crush the barrier and the thought process that is saying that wave energy is complicated, because it's no longer complicated, it's easy and it's simple. And I would say another thing which is not directly related to the company or to the technology, but is related to the company, is the fact that David Leb and I were the founders of the company. We currently hold around 50% of EcoWave Power. So our interest is very, very much aligned with the interest of our shareholders and our investors. And I think this is a very, very important when making an investment decision about a company.
Yeah, shareholders definitely like to see management with skin in the game. There's no question about that. So, but looking forward, looking ahead, let's say on a 12 to 18 month horizon, or whatever horizon you think is relevant here, what are the key signposts that you'd want to kind of highlight for investors that they should be looking out for?
So I think definitely the opening of each additional project is a significant milestone. So the next projects that we have that we announced to the market are the project in Taiwan with IKE, in India with Bharat Petroleum. India is a gigantic market. It has a huge coastline. According to their study, there's a possibility there to harness like 40,000 megawatts of wave energy. And of course, the Portuguese project, which will mark a new era for wave energy around the world, since it's the first time that a significant scale of wave energy, grid-connected wave energy, is being built. In the same time, we're working on new deals. We just announced a feasibility study that we're doing in a port in South Africa, and many other deals that we're still not discussing because they're in negotiation phases. I think also at a certain point, the artificial intelligence and the technology companies will understand the high potential that wave energy has, and we will also start producing electricity for data centers and for other kind of technological endeavors. I think that's a large market for us as well. So I think we have a very, very exciting, I would say 12 months ahead of us, since our Portuguese project is planned to be opened by September 2026, with a lot of new announcements, new improvements in the technology, and new projects coming to life with large-scale partnerships.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Ina, for taking the time to join us and sharing your insights. We've covered a lot today, and this is a very exciting story. So, congratulations on your progress to date. I know our listeners will be eager to follow developments at EcoWave Power as we move forward. But before I pass the podcast back over to Tim, I just want to ask, give you a chance to provide any concluding remarks.
So I think you kind of asked everything, but I think my concluding remarks are that wave energy is a new and an exciting type of renewable energy. It is the closest thing in terms of stability to traditional energy that we know that can actually be 24/7. It's simple, it's easy, it's cost efficient. The more people are aware of it, the more people are supporting it, the faster we can go.
That's great. Thank you very much. Over to you, Tim.
Great. Thank you for joining us today. Ina Braverman, CEO of EcoWave Power, NASDAQ, ticker symbol WAVE. And thanks to my equity research colleague, Peter Gastreich, for also joining us. Lastly, a special thanks to the producer and editor of the podcast, Krista Fitzpatrick. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, as well as visiting www.watertowerresearch.com to stay up to speed on the company's small cap written research reports, podcast, industry-specific symposiums, fireside chats, and conference schedules. We'll see you next time for another edition of the WTR Small Cap Spotlight podcast.